All right, hi everyone. It's Miss Lyons. It's chapter 2 for Hunger Games. So I'm just going to give you a quick 10-minute overview of the entire chapter in case you missed it or you don't have all of your notes. So if you have your notebook with me, go ahead and start copying some of this down as I go through it. If you don't have your notebook, I am going to post this on Google Classroom so you can copy this down whenever you need to or just to go back and refer for review. So, starting with the beginning of chapter 1, we know that Katniss is this strong character. She's kind of independent. She's a sociopath because she tried to drown a cat. The only person that she loves so far is her sister Prim, which she already states, and she has a best friend, Gale. So, everything is taking place in District 12. District 12 is where she lives, and we know that it's a poor district. You can just review all of those notes back in chapter 1 if you're not sure about who we're talking about or what this is. So we're in chapter 2. We just learned that Prim, her baby sister, got picked for the games. So for my key characters, I have Katniss, I have Prim, which is her sister. Mrs. Everdeen is not in this chapter. I don't know why I wrote that, so I'm going to delete that. And we have Peeta Mellark. So far in our setting, this is taking place in the reaping ceremony. So she's watching Prim getting ready to mount the steps. She's super duper scared. She's like, oh my goodness, I did everything in my power to make sure she wasn't picked. Her paper was 1 in thousands, and she still got picked. So our tone and our mood right now is that Katniss is scared. She's shocked. She's in despair. And when you're in despair, you just feel like I've tried everything. And in the end, everything still sucks and everything is still going to go wrong. So anytime you're in despair, it's just like, you know what? I woke up this morning. I lost my shoe. I didn't do my homework. My teacher's getting on my nerves. Just everything of the day is just going wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it. So she is in despair. So that's our mood and our tone. She's shocked. She's angry. She's anxious and she doesn't know what to do. So our new vocabulary is taunting, which means to provoke, and tenuous, which means flimsy or weak. So going through our plot events, we know that the first plot event is that Katniss can't believe Prim was picked, and she says, hadn't I done everything? And that's on Collins, page 21. So she's like, I did everything. I made sure she didn't take out Tesserae, which means that you put your name in an extra time to get more oil and bread. So she made sure Prim didn't do that. She didn't teach Prim how to hunt, how to cook, because she took over. She did all of that so Prim didn't have to. She made sure to put her name in 20 times so that Prim could only have her name in once. And the odds were still not in her favor. So then we learn that Katniss volunteers herself as tribute. And that's on page 22 where she says, I volunteer as tribute. So we know with this quote, this tribute and her having to take her sister's place, this is a huge sacrifice and act of love. She's doing this out of love because Prim is the only person in the world that she cares about. And in that same chapter, she mentions anytime they say tribute, it means corpse. That means dead body. They're essentially walking dead bodies. So why is she going to put Prim, who's walking around talking about Quack and she's super cute? She's going to walk on that field and somebody's going to blow her head off, essentially. And I know that sounds harsh, but Prim is not going to make it. Katniss, maybe. Miss Lyons, absolutely. But Prim is not going to make it. So, with her knowing that she doesn't want to watch on national television her baby sister getting blown to bits, so she volunteers herself because she knows she at least has somewhat of a chance. Prim does not stand a chance. So, this was a huge sacrifice and act of love. And so, for the next part, it says District 12 does not celebrate. So Effie Trinket, the girl from the lady from the Capitol, she's like, oh my goodness, this is super exciting. We have a volunteer. So why don't we just, bring her up on stage and everybody clap because this is super interesting and it's going to make your district look great. And District 12, they're not happy with this. They're like, why is this poor girl having to sacrifice herself as another dead body because you guys keep making these games? So, in their boldest form of dissent, that means of saying that, they completely disagree, they're not happy with this, they don't clap like Effie wants them to. They don't celebrate, they're not excited, they're not like, ooh, this girl's gonna win or this girl's gonna lose. They're silent. And their whole form of protest against the government is by not clapping. And by not clapping, they're saying the loudest things that they possibly can even though they are completely quiet. They're saying we don't agree, we don't condone any of this, and all of what you're doing is wrong. So sometimes silence is the most powerful weapon, and that's what they're using. So in my notes, I put that this is an important example of sociological criticism. So here we see that the government is playing games with people's lives. They're using this as, a form of entertainment, just like they do in today's world. They pick and choose who they support. They pick and choose who lives, who dies, who goes to jail, who doesn't, who gets what. And this is all basically like a chess game for them. And in the meantime, the people on the ground, us, we're the ones that are suffering. For every move that they make, it's a huge impact on us. So, this is what sociological criticism looks like, is when the government has an impact on the people, and we see it in today's society. So when they're protesting with silence, think about all the times that we've protested with signs, when we've had Black Lives Matter. I know we have an entire war going on with Palestine and Gaza where we had Asian hate. We're protesting these things. And what did the government do? Nothing. They just televised this and pit us against one another. And that's essentially what they're doing here in the games. They're pitting districts against one another in this fight for food as a form of entertainment. And this connects to what we do in society now. The government, they are the puppets, and they're the puppeteers, and we're essentially the puppets. And so now it goes on and it continues, and Peeta Mellark's name is chosen. So Peeta is a significant character in this chapter, especially to Katniss, where she's like, oh my God, why did this kid specifically get picked? Now, mind you, Katniss says they're not friends. That's not her boyfriend. That's not her family member. But she feels bad that this kid is getting picked. So Peeta's thing is that he saved Katniss's life once upon a time. So in this chapter on page 27 all the way through 31, she's describing how her family was on the brink of starvation. So as you remember in chapter 1, Katniss, her dad died. He was blown to pieces in a coal mine explosion. And she says, on page 27, at 11 years old, Prim was only 7 and she took over as head of the family. So when you become head of the family, that means you are cooking all the meals, you're the one going to work, you're the one paying the bills. You essentially have to play mom and dad. And remember, her mom went into a deep depression, so she was no help. She was kind of just sitting and just letting her kids starve to death because she was just in distraught. So Katniss had to step up. And so there comes a time where they use all the money that they got from their dad's death. Their mom is not helping. Prim needs clothes. They need food. And they hadn't eaten in days. They were living off of boiled water and tea bags and basil leaves. Now, just think about having a leaf and boiled water for dinner only. No breakfast, no lunch, no snacks, just boiled water and a leaf. You're not going to survive very long. And so she knows that. And she's like, okay, well, maybe if I wait, 7 more days or, 2 more weeks, I can make it so I can turn 12, which is when you essentially get entered into the games. And she was going to start taking out Tesserae to get food. So she was too young at this point. She was like, I'm only 11. I can't put my name in the games yet. I can't even get us grain, oil, or bread yet until I turn 12. So she's stumbling along on the road. She's trying to sell Prim's old baby clothes that no one wants, no one can fit, and she drops them in the mud. And she describes herself as not being strong enough to bend down to pick up the clothes because she's so weak she wasn't going to be able to stand back up. So she's hunting, she's walking around, she's searching trash cans for food, which is illegal in District 12. If you're caught searching someone's trash cans for food, that's essentially stealing and you will get executed. So she's risking her life once again to save Prim and herself and her mom essentially by searching through trash cans trying to find rotten vegetables, rotted meat, something that somebody's going to throw away that they don't seem as, healthy enough to eat, that they're desperate enough to eat. So she's out of luck because all the trash cans have been emptied, everything's been cleared, and she stumbles across Peeta's bakery. And so she's smelling the bread and she's like, oh my goodness, there's nothing I can't go in here and buy the bread. and she comes across Peta's mom, who catches her kind of sneaking and looking through the trash can. So she kind of shoos Katniss away and tells her, you need to go, like, you're poor, kind of get off my porch type of thing. And so Katniss is defeated. She's like, I'm just going to lay here and die because I can't go back home empty handed. Because if I do, Prim, me, and Mom are going to die. So Peeta happens to see Katniss. And so what he does is he purposely burns 2 loaves of bread. And his mom gets so angry at him that she slaps him across the face and she's like, we can't sell this bread. Just throw it to the pigs, throw it to the dogs. There's nothing we can do with this bread because you burned it. Mind you, Peeta takes the bread outside and he still sees Katniss kind of lingering by the tree. And so what he does is he rips off the pieces that he burns so it'll reveal the bread is still good underneath, and he throws it on the ground and kind of kicks it towards Katniss. So he's not giving it to her, but he's kind of giving it to her. So he kicks it over to her and she picks up the bread and she kind of stuffs it underneath her, and she looks at his cheek and realizes he's been slapped. He's been beat for this. And she runs home and they have that bread to eat. And so Peeta saves her life. And she's remembering this with this flashback that she's giving in this chapter. So she's like, dang, this guy that saved my life is essentially the guy that I'm going to have to kill. And so in the end, on 31, she's, on the end of the chapter, she's like, well, you know what? I didn't even get to thank this guy. Maybe I won't have to. I probably won't have to kill him. Somebody else will probably get to him before I do. But she also mentions the odds haven't been entirely in her favor. So I don't know. This kind of seems like a little bit of foreshadowing because she's saying somebody else might have to kill him. It may not be me. But if she's saying the odds aren't in her favor, who do we think is going to have to be the one to kill Peeta? And so I'm pretty sure you might know the answer to that. So now we're going to go down to our theme. And so far, our primary theme in this chapter is that true love requires sacrifice. And so we know this because in this chapter, I spelled chapter wrong, Katniss sacrifices herself for Prim's sake in the games. So she says, I volunteer as tribute. That's on Collins page 22. And this shows that she is willing to put her life on the line to save Prim, who she mentioned is the most important person in the world to her. So keep in mind, every time I'm using a quote, notice that I'm putting in the same citation that I wrote in my notes next to my quote. If I don't see this in your test, you will miss a good chunk of the points because you are not citing an MLA format properly. And so now, I'm going to do the literary theory that best applies. I'm going to show you guys actually like what I mean when I'm asking you to write it or kind of connect it to society. This is what I mean. So the literary theory that applies the best in this chapter is sociological theory. And so we know this because Collins is essentially criticizing the government's treatment of the people, how it's a game, like they're kind of just not affected by the tragedy that's going on in District 12 or in any of the districts, and the fact that they have to fight for food. They're viewing this as a game and just something to watch, and it just has no effect on them. And so connecting that to the real world, we have to protest the government's ways and how they treat us, even if it causes us harm. And we're essentially controlled. So this is evident in her description of District 12's refusal to celebrate children being sacrificed to die for fun, and Katniss's interpretation of the Capitol and being at their mercy, which was on Collins 18. And Collins is essentially alluding to or giving a hint that the government takes pleasure in the pain of its people and that we are essentially helpless. So that's an example of how I want you to take the literary theories and kind of just connect them to the real world. What is she saying about it? What quotes can you find or what examples can you find to prove it? And how does this essentially look to us? So that's what I mean when I say make sure you write your literary theory. This is sociological. So when we're comparing the government versus the people. So we're not doing Marxist yet or gender feminist or reader response. If you found any of these and you're able to write them, definitely. I just gave an example for sociological for this chapter. But if you have another one that you found more interesting or that you were able to better connect to, absolutely write it. You don't have to write the same one that I'm writing. So I'm going to end the wrap up right here. Go ahead and watch this video as many times as possible, but definitely make sure that you're looking at those quotes and that you know what's going on in the story. So good luck on your chapter test.